The wedding hall glowed with golden chandeliers, their crystals scattering light across 100 smiling faces. The string quartet played softly in the corner, filling the room with the elegance Emily had dreamed of since she was a little girl. White roses lined the aisle, their scent mingling with the faint perfume of the guests. To everyone watching, this was perfection. A family gathered to celebrate love, commitment, and a new beginning. But for Linda, the mother of the bride, something felt wrong. She sat near the front row, her satin dress hugging her frame, hands clasped together in her lap. At 56, Linda carried herself with dignity, the kind of quiet strength people admired without fully understanding. Yet as she looked at her husband Robert standing proudly by Emily's side, there was a shadow behind her smile. She had known Robert for more than 3 decades, long enough to recognize when his eyes wandered. And today they wandered too much. At first she told herself it was nerves. Weddings brought emotions to the surface after all. Robert was giving away their only daughter, the joy of their lives. Of course, he would be restless, emotional, distracted. But then Linda noticed a pattern. Robert's gaze kept sliding away from Emily, away from the guests, and settling on Anna. Anna, Emily's bridesmaid, her so-called best friend from college. 28 years old, tall, with auburn hair that caught the light every time she moved. She wore the same soft rose-colored dress as the other bridesmaids, but there was something in the way she carried herself, almost as if she knew she was being watched. Linda's chest tightened. Robert's eyes lingered too long, and when Anna looked back, it wasn't the glance of a friend. It was loaded, heavy, dangerous. The vows began. Emily's voice trembled as she promised love and loyalty, her young groom holding her hands with adoration. Guests dabbed their eyes with tissues. Linda tried to focus on her daughter, but Robert's shifting posture, his subtle smirk whenever Anna smiled, kept pulling her attention away. She dug her nails into her palm beneath her folded program. Number, not today, not here. I won't let suspicion poison Emily's happiness. She forced her lips into a smile for the photographs, clapped when the minister pronounced them husband and wife, and rose to her feet when the bride and groom walked back down the aisle hand in hand. Yet beneath the applause, Linda's heart was sinking. She glanced at Robert again. His eyes weren't on Emily. They followed Anna as she glided behind the couple, carrying the bouquet of petals. And for the briefest moment, Linda caught something unmistakable. Anna's lips curved into a smile meant only for Robert, one that made Linda's stomach twist. The reception followed in a nearby hall, decorated with golden drapes and a towering cake gleaming under soft lights. Guests laughed and mingled, champagne glasses clinking. Linda tried to steady herself, chatting politely with cousins and family friends, but her mind buzzed. Robert kept disappearing, sometimes to check on the staff, sometimes to make a quick call. Each time he returned, his tie slightly loosened, his expression a little too flushed. Linda caught him at one point standing by the drinks table, and though dozens of guests surrounded him, his attention was locked once again on Anna. She felt as if the world tilted sideways. Her throat tightened. Not here, not now. Please, God, don't let this be what I think it is. The narrator's voice lingers like a shadow in the story. In the middle of vows and celebrations, betrayal often hides beneath the clink of glasses. For Linda, the wedding day was no longer about the future of her daughter's marriage. It was about the unraveling of her own. As the bride and groom danced their first dance, Linda forced her tears back. She told herself she was imagining things, that perhaps stress was playing tricks on her. But deep inside, a cold certainty had begun to grow. She didn't yet know the full story, but she knew this. Robert was hiding something, and Anna was part of it. And before the night ended, the truth would not only claw its way to the surface, it would explode in front of everyone. The reception hall pulsed with joy. Laughter echoed off the gilded walls. Glasses chimed with every toast. And the band shifted from classical melodies into lively tunes that pulled guests toward the dance floor. To anyone watching from the outside, it was a flawless evening, a celebration destined to be remembered with photographs and happy stories. But Linda felt the fracture beneath the glamour. She kept her eyes on Robert, tracking his movements as carefully as a detective follows a suspect. He wasn't mingling the way he usually did, not making his rounds to shake hands and share jokes with distant relatives. Instead, he lingered too long at the edges, scanning the crowd as though waiting for someone. And whenever Anna drifted close, his shoulders straightened, his smile sharpened, his entire demeanor shifting like a man caught in a secret thrill. Linda's stomach churned as she watched. Anna floated through the room with a kind of effortless grace, her rose-colored gown swaying like it had been tailored just for her. The other bridesmaids laughed together, snapping pictures with the bride, but Anna's attention often strayed elsewhere. Linda noticed it, the stolen glances toward Robert, the way her laughter always seemed louder when he was near, as if she was performing just for him. Whispers buzzed near Linda's table. Two bridesmaids, seated just behind her, leaned close, giggling. "She shouldn't be so obvious," one said. "Emily doesn't notice a thing," the other whispered back. "But if her mom catches on—" Linda froze. Her pulse hammered against her ribcage. She strained to hear more, but the conversation shifted quickly, drowned by music and applause as the groom's uncle began a toast. Still, those fragments burned into her mind. So it wasn't just me. Others saw it too. Robert excused himself again, claiming he needed to check with the event planner, but Linda, who had spent 30 years decoding his excuses, knew better. She followed him this time, slipping quietly out of the side door just a moment later. The hallway smelled of lilies from the floral arrangements. At the far end, near the back entrance to the garden, Linda caught sight of them, Robert and Anna. Her heart stuttered. Anna was standing close, far too close, her hand rising to smooth the lapel of Robert's suit. The gesture was quick, intimate, like something a wife might do before a photograph. Robert chuckled softly, brushing a lock of Anna's hair behind her ear. The world tilted. Linda gripped the wall to steady herself, fury rising hot in her chest. How dare he? How dare they? But before she could step forward, voices echoed from the reception hall. Robert and Anna straightened instantly, masks snapping back into place. By the time other guests spilled into the corridor, laughing and carrying drinks, the two of them were smiling innocently, as though nothing had happened at all. Linda retreated, her breath ragged. She forced herself back into the hall, slipping into her chair as though she had simply been freshening up. But inside, a storm raged. She looked at Emily, the bride glowing, radiant, blissfully unaware. Linda's heart ached for her daughter, for the day that should have belonged only to her. She wanted to scream, to expose Robert and Anna right then and there, but she swallowed her anger. Not yet, not now. If I destroy this night, it destroys Emily too. The narrator's voice wraps around the scene. Suspicion, once planted, grows like a poisonous vine. It strangles every smile, every laugh, every joyful moment. For Linda, the wedding was no longer a celebration. It had become an investigation. Every glance, every whisper, every absence carried the weight of evidence. And though she had not yet uncovered the crime, she knew the truth would not stay buried for long. Linda dabbed her eyes with a napkin, masking her trembling hands. She smiled when guests spoke to her, nodded politely when distant relatives complimented Emily's dress, but her mind stayed locked on Robert and Anna, their secret dance just out of reach, and Linda vowed silently. Before the night ended, she would drag it into the light. The reception hall shimmered with candlelight as servers moved gracefully between tables, setting down plates of roasted chicken and fine wine. The murmur of conversations filled the air, punctuated by bursts of laughter. By all appearances, the evening was unfolding perfectly, yet Linda sat stiffly at her table, her smile fixed like porcelain, her eyes darting constantly to her husband. Robert had returned from his little errand with Anna. His hair was slightly mussed, though he smoothed it back as if no one would notice. His glass of champagne never left his hand, and his face glowed red, not from drink, but from something else. Guilt, perhaps, or worse, exhilaration. The master of ceremonies tapped a spoon against his glass, calling for quiet. "Ladies and gentlemen," he boomed, "it's time for some words from those closest to the happy couple." Applause rose, and Robert was the first to stand. Linda's hands clenched in her lap as he made his way to the microphone. He adjusted his tie, cleared his throat, and smiled that practiced, charismatic smile she had seen charm business partners for decades. My daughter, Robert began, his voice thick with emotion, is the light of my life. Watching her grow into the woman she is today has been the greatest privilege I could ever ask for. His words trembled, drawing a few awes from the crowd. And today, as she begins this journey of love and loyalty, I can only hope she finds in her husband what I found in her mother: faithfulness, devotion, and honesty. There it was, honesty. The word hit Linda like a slap. She nearly laughed aloud at the hypocrisy. Robert, standing there in his tuxedo, preaching loyalty while stealing glances at a woman young enough to be his daughter. The guests clapped warmly as Robert raised his glass. But Linda's eyes never left him, and she caught it, the moment his gaze flicked across the room. Not at Emily, not at the groom, but at Anna. And Anna, seated among the bridesmaids, lowered her lashes, her smile curving with an intimacy that no one else seemed to notice. The pit in Linda's stomach deepened. Then came Anna's turn. She walked gracefully to the front, bouquet in hand, and faced the crowd. Her cheeks were flushed, whether from champagne or nerves, Linda could not tell. But as soon as she opened her mouth, Linda knew something was wrong. "To Emily," Anna began, her voice lilting with forced cheer. "My dearest friend. You've always been like a sister to me. You've shared your secrets, your dreams, and your heart. And today I'm so honored to stand by your side." The guests smiled. Some dabbed their eyes. But Anna's eyes didn't linger on Emily. No, they sought Robert. "I remember," Anna continued, "late nights talking about love, about what it means to truly be seen by someone, to be understood in ways no one else can." She paused. Her eyes flicked toward Robert, quick but unmistakable. His jaw tightened. Linda's breath caught. Around the tables, a few puzzled glances passed among guests. The words were strange, oddly personal, almost like a confession wrapped in a toast. Anna smiled faintly, her gaze darting again, this time locking briefly with Robert's. "And I know, Emily, that you found someone who sees you that way, who knows every part of you and treasures it." The room clapped politely, but Linda saw what no one else did: Robert's clenched fist. Around the stem of his glass, the way he swallowed hard, his eyes blazing with a warning meant only for Anna. Linda's chest burned. This wasn't just suspicion anymore. This was a language of glances, coded and dangerous, spoken right there under the chandelier for anyone perceptive enough to notice. The narrator's voice fell like a shadow. "In every crime, there is a slip, a word too many, a gesture too bold, a look that lasts too long." Tonight, Anna's toast became that slip, the mistake that opened the door to truth. The applause died down, and Anna returned to her seat. Linda forced herself to breathe, her fingers trembling against her napkin. She wasn't imagining it. Others sensed it too. The way the room grew quieter, the way relatives exchanged uncertain glances. The perfect facade of the evening was cracking, and Linda knew the cracks would soon give way to a collapse. The music shifted to a lively tune, and the dance floor came alive. Emily and her new husband twirled among cheers, guests clapping in rhythm, the bride's gown sweeping elegantly with each spin. Laughter filled the air, glasses clinked, and the smell of the towering cake drifted sweetly through the hall. To anyone else, it was pure joy. But to Linda, it felt like a mask hiding something rotten. Her eyes never left Robert. He laughed too loudly with guests, clapped too heartily at the band. Yet his eyes strayed again and again, always to Anna. The bridesmaid lingered at the edge of the dance floor, her hands clasped in front of her lips curved in a private smile. When Robert excused himself yet again, Linda didn't hesitate this time. She rose quietly, her chair scraping softly against the floor, and followed him through the side doors. The garden outside was hushed, the noise of the party muffled by the heavy doors. Moonlight washed over trimmed hedges and a stone fountain. The air smelled of damp earth and roses. Linda stepped carefully across the patio, her heels clicking faintly. And then she froze. There, in the shadows near the hedge, Robert stood with Anna. His arms circled her waist, drawing her close. Their heads bent together, whispers laced with laughter. Linda's heart pounded in her ears, a violent drum that nearly drowned the sound of Anna's soft giggle. Robert lifted his hand, cupping Anna's cheek with the tenderness of a lover. Linda's throat closed. She wanted to scream, to tear through the night with rage, but her body refused to move. She stood rooted, watching as her husband, the man who had vowed loyalty before God and family, lowered his lips to another woman's mouth. The kiss was not clumsy, not stolen in panic. It was deliberate, intimate, practiced. Linda staggered back, her hand pressed to her mouth. The garden spun, nausea rising like bile. She gripped the edge of the stone fountain to keep from collapsing. Tears pricked her eyes, but fury burned hotter. Her suspicion had transformed into undeniable proof. There was no mistaking what she had seen. For a moment, she considered confronting them right there, screaming until the entire hall poured out to witness their disgrace. But then she pictured Emily, her radiant face, her joyful smile, and the thought shattered her. This was her daughter's wedding day. To expose Robert and Anna now would crush Emily's happiness in an instant. Linda bit her lips so hard she tasted blood. Not yet, she told herself. But soon, the truth will not stay buried, and when it surfaces, it will consume them both. Robert and Anna pulled apart, their hands still lingering. Anna's laughter bubbled like a guilty secret, and Robert glanced around nervously, unaware of Linda's eyes in the shadows. They whispered again before slipping back toward the hall. Linda remained by the fountain, trembling. The narrator's voice sliced through the silence. Every betrayal leaves evidence. Sometimes it is hidden in lies, sometimes in whispers, and sometimes it is left in plain sight, bold and reckless, daring to be discovered. Tonight, Robert and Anna left their evidence beneath the moonlight, and Linda became its witness. When she returned to the reception, her steps were heavy, but her resolve had hardened. She forced a smile as cousins stopped her to chat, nodding as if nothing were wrong. Yet inside, she was already planning. Her eyes found Robert as he rejoined the dance floor, slipping easily back into his role of proud father and devoted husband. No one would suspect, but Linda knew. She carried the truth now like a blade hidden under silk, waiting for the moment to strike. And that moment, she promised herself, would come before the night ended. The hall shimmered with lights and laughter when Linda re-entered, but she could no longer hear the music. Her pulse was louder than the violins, her anger sharper than the clinking glasses. She sat, rigid and silent, her gaze burning into Robert as he danced with Emily, spinning their daughter around the floor like nothing had happened. Linda's hands trembled under the table. She tried to hold back, tried to remind herself this was Emily's day. But the memory of Robert's lips pressed to Anna's, the sound of Anna's laugh tangled in his arms, was too much. Her restraint cracked like glass underfoot. When Robert excused himself once more, his same flimsy excuse about checking on the caterer, Linda followed without hesitation. She moved quickly, her heels sharp against the marble. The corridor was dim, lined with mirrors that reflected her storm-dark eyes. And there they were again. Near the back entrance, half hidden by a curtain, Robert and Anna huddled together. Robert's hand rested on her lower back, and Anna leaned in close, her lips brushing his ear. Linda's voice split the silence. "Enjoying yourself, Robert?" They both jolted as though struck. Robert spun, his face pale, his hand jerking back like he'd touched fire. Anna stumbled a step away, her cheeks flushing crimson. "Linda," Robert stammered, his voice shaky, It's not what it looks like." "Not what it looks like?" Linda's words dripped venom. "Then by all means, explain how kissing my daughter's bridesmaid on her wedding night doesn't look like betrayal." Anna's eyes darted like a trapped animal's. I should go," she whispered, her voice cracking. "No," Linda snapped, her voice low and dangerous. "Stay. You don't get to slither away while I choke on the filth you two have been hiding." Robert raised his hands as if to calm her. "Linda, please, you're overreacting. It was a mistake. Just a moment." "A moment?" Linda stepped closer, her fury radiating. "I gave you 30 years. 30 years of loyalty, of sacrifice, of building a life together. And you threw it all away for this?" She jabbed a finger toward Anna, who flinched and shrank against the wall. Robert's voice hardened. Keep your voice down. People will hear. Good, Linda hissed. Let them. Let everyone know what kind of man you really are. Footsteps echoed nearby. Two groomsmen passing through the hall, pausing as they caught sight of the scene. Their eyes widened, whispers starting before they hurried back toward the reception. The word would spread like wildfire now. Robert's mask cracked. Linda, please. Don't do this here. Think of Emily. Think of Emily? Linda's voice shook with rage. You've humiliated her already. You paraded your lies through her wedding like it was a stage for your little performance. Do you think she won't notice? Do you think she won't remember the whispers, the looks, the way her bridesmaid couldn't stop staring at her father? Anna burst into tears, covering her face. Robert tried to steady her, but Linda stepped between them, her voice sharp as a blade. Touch her again, Robert, and I swear I will drag you both into that hall and show everyone exactly who you are. The air felt thick, heavy with the tension of secrets unraveling. The narrator's voice cut in. Every crime reaches its breaking point. Lies can only bend so far before they snap, and when they do, the pieces cut deep. Robert's face twisted, half pleading, half defiant. But before he could form another excuse, Linda turned on her heel and strode back toward the hall, her fury no longer something she could contain. Behind her, Robert muttered something to Anna, but Linda didn't care. Her footsteps quickened. She had spent years covering for him, hiding the cracks, preserving an illusion. But not tonight, not in front of her daughter. Tonight, the truth would be exposed, no matter how many hearts it shattered. And as she pushed open the doors to the reception, her voice rose above the music. Everyone, I have something to say. The music faltered as Linda's voice rang out, sharp and unyielding. Guests froze mid-dance. Forks paused halfway to mouths. Champagne. Glasses trembling in surprised hands. Emily and her new husband stopped in the center of the dance floor, turning toward her with puzzled smiles that quickly faded at the sight of her trembling frame. Linda stood at the edge of the room, her chest rising and falling with fury. The chandeliers seemed to blaze brighter, casting long shadows across faces twisted in confusion. For 30 years she had held her tongue, but tonight her voice was louder than the violins, sharper than the clinking glass. I will not let this night be poisoned by lies, she declared. Murmurs erupted through the hall. Guests leaned in to whisper. The band faltered into silence. Robert, rushing in from the hallway with Anna stumbling behind him, froze at the doorway, his face drained of color, his lips parting with a silent plea that never reached her. Linda's eyes locked on Emily. Sweetheart, she said, her voice softening for a heartbeat. I need you to know the truth before it destroys you too. The crowd shifted uneasily, tension thick as smoke. Emily's brow furrowed, her voice trembling. Mom, what are you talking about? Linda turned, her gaze hardening on Robert. Your father, she spat, the man who stood here tonight preaching honesty and loyalty, has been sneaking away with your bridesmaid. With Anna gasps rippled like a wave through the hall. Plates clattered, someone dropped a glass, and Emily staggered back as though struck. Her eyes darted from her mother to her father, then to Anna, who stood pale and trembling, her mascara streaking down her cheeks. Tell me it's not true, Emily whispered, her voice breaking. Dad? Robert stepped forward, his hands raised in weak protest. Emily, listen to me. It's not what she's saying. Your mother is... Don't you dare lie to her, Linda's voice thundered, cutting through his excuse. I saw you in the garden, in each other's arms. You didn't even have the decency to hide your filth far from her wedding. You dragged it right into the middle of her day. The crowd erupted. Aunts clutched pearls, uncles muttered curses, cousins snapped photos with trembling hands as though capturing a crime scene. The groom pulled Emily close, his arm wrapping protectively around her shoulders as she sobbed into his chest. Anna tried to speak, her voice faltering. Emily, I never meant... Emily tore free from her husband's embrace, her eyes blazing with betrayal. You were supposed to be my friend. My sister. And you kissed my father? Her voice cracked into a sob. How could you do this to me? Anna collapsed into tears, unable to answer. Robert reached toward Emily, but she recoiled as if his touch were poison. "Don't," she hissed. "Don't you dare come near me." The narrator's voice laced the silence. Some truths cut deeper than any blade. When spoken aloud, they leave scars that never fade. Tonight, Linda's words were not just an accusation. They were a verdict, and the courtroom was filled with every witness who mattered. Emily turned back to her mother, her face streaked with tears. "Thank you," she whispered, her voice trembling but clear, "for telling me, for protecting me." Even when it hurt, Robert staggered, desperation clawing at his features. "Linda, please. We can fix this. Don't destroy everything we've built." Linda's laugh was hollow, sharp as shattered glass. "You destroyed it long ago, Robert. Tonight, I'm simply dragging it into the light." Security guards, already alerted by whispers of the earlier confrontation, stepped closer. Guests parted as Robert tried to approach Emily again, but she raised her hand, her voice like ice. "You're no father of mine. Get out!" The hall erupted in gasps once more. Robert froze, his lips trembling. Then, as security advanced, he lowered his head in defeat. Anna fled in humiliation, covering her face, and Robert was escorted from the hall under the burning eyes of family and strangers alike. Emily collapsed into her mother's arms, sobbing. Linda held her tightly, her eyes closed against the tears streaming down her own face. For the first time in years, she felt lighter. Not happy, not free, but relieved that the truth was no longer rotting in silence. The wedding was ruined, yes, but Emily's future would not be poisoned by her father's lies. And for that, Linda would never regret speaking out. The hall never fully recovered from the storm Linda unleashed. Though the band resumed playing softly and servers tried to salvage the evening with slices of cake, the joy had drained from the room like water from a broken glass. Guests whispered in hushed circles, eyes darting toward the door where Robert had been escorted out, or toward the empty chair where Anna's bouquet still lay abandoned. Emily sat at the head table, her face buried in her husband's shoulder. He stroked her hair, murmuring words of comfort, while family members hovered uncertainly nearby. Linda stood close, her hand resting gently on her daughter's back, her presence firm and unshakable. The bride's tears slowed at last. She lifted her head, eyes swollen but burning with resolve. "He's not welcome in my life anymore," she said, her voice raw but steady. "Not after this." Her new husband nodded firmly. "Then he won't be. From this day forward, you decide who stands beside you. And if that man isn't your father, then so be it." The crowd murmured, some with sympathy, others with judgment. But no one dared question Emily's decision, not after what they had witnessed. Linda's chest ached with a complex mixture of grief and relief. She had loved Robert once, fiercely, and for decades she had defended their marriage, endured his distance, forgiven his temper. But tonight, all that history collapsed beneath the weight of his betrayal. She no longer saw him as her husband. He was just another man who had chosen selfishness over loyalty, lust over family. The narrator's voice wrapped the moment in gravity. In every crime, punishment follows. Some pay in prisons, some in courts. But the cruelest punishments are those handed down by the ones we love. The loss of trust, of dignity, of belonging. Robert's sentence was exile, and it was delivered by his daughter's trembling voice. In the weeks that followed, the scandal spread beyond the wedding. Anna left town in disgrace, her name whispered with contempt by those who once praised her beauty. Robert's reputation in the community crumbled. Business partners distanced themselves, invitations stopped arriving, and his once polished image was stained with betrayal he could not scrub clean. Linda filed for separation within a month. She did not shout or gloat. She signed the papers with a steady hand, her decision already made the night she caught him under the moonlight. Emily leaned on her mother during those weeks, their bond forged stronger through the fire of betrayal. "You saved me," she told Linda one quiet evening, her voice breaking. "You gave me truth when it would have been easier to let me live in a lie." Linda kissed her daughter's forehead, her heart swelling with both sorrow and pride. "I didn't save you, Emily. I just refused to let him take any more from us." The final image of that wedding was not the cake or the bouquet toss. It was a mother standing beside her daughter, fierce and unyielding, refusing to let betrayal go unanswered. And though the marriage that had lasted 30 years collapsed in one night, Linda knew she had gained something far greater: her dignity, her daughter's trust, and the proof that truth, no matter how painful, was always worth speaking. The narrator's voice closed the tale. Some crimes leave blood, others leave scars. But betrayal at a wedding leaves both memory and lesson. Love built on lies will always fall. And when it does, the strongest are those who dare to expose it, no matter the cost. Linda left that night with her daughter's arm linked firmly in hers. Robert walked alone, swallowed by shadows. And the wedding once meant to symbolize union became instead the night a family shattered, and a mother proved her strength in the wreckage.
And that wraps up today's story. Now we want to hear from you. Where are you watching from? Drop your city or country in the comments, and let's see how far these stories reach. If this story moved you or gave you chills, give it a like, share, and subscribe for more powerful stories. One last thing, rate the story from 1 to 10 in the comments. Your feedback helps us bring you even better ones next time. Thanks for watching. We appreciate you being part of this storytelling journey.